Is Eric Valentine, and I'm going to talk to you about a SAS program that I put together that creates a regressor file for temporary change regressors and variety dates and decay rates. Outlier or intervention effect, the models and abrupt change to the time series level, followed by an exponential return to the previous level. We call the rate of return to the previous level the decay rate. And X13 and ReGRessors Seed software allows the user to set a decay rate for the TC outliers. However, only one decay rate can be chosen, and it is applied to all the TC outliers. With this SAS program, you can create multiple TC regressors at distinct decay rates and store them in a text file. The text file can be read into X13 to put your TC variables into your regARIMA model. So getting to the program, you'll need to set up 8 macro variables. First, you need to input the frequency of the data in the freq macro variable. Currently, the only frequencies that are allowed are monthly and quarterly. So you'll set freq equal to 12 for monthly data, and you'll set it equal to 4 for quarterly data. The next two are the start date and the end date of your span. So each date must be in the year-month format with the 4-digit year and the 2-digit month. Next, you'll need to input the max lead variable. X13, the default for X13 for the max lead is 12. So if you don't set it in your spec, you'll just set it to 12 in this program. And the maximum in X13 is 120. And that's also the maximum for this program. So similarly, next for the max back variable, the default for X13 is 0. And if you don't set it in your spec, you'll just set it to 0 here. The maximum, again, is also 120 in X13, and is also the maximum in this program. So after that, you're going to put the TC dates in the year-month format in the TC macro. This macro variable is a list that must not exceed 10 entries. Next, you also input the rates of decay for each TC in the R macro. Each entry is also a list that can't exceed 10 entries, and each entry must also be between 0 and 1. And finally, you'll set the location, the file location and name with the full path that you want in the TC file macro variable. And then from there, you'll be ready to run the program. So I set up several macros to develop the SAS data set of TCs, as well as checks on the values assigned to the macro variables. The main macro checks that the macro variables meet the correct criteria. If a macro variable is inappropriate, the program will stop and you will get an error message explaining why. Otherwise, the TC data macro will create a SAS data set of the TC regressors, and the proc export procedure will create the specified text document using the TC macro variable in the out file argument. The program does come with documentation, but there are also instructions in the comments of this program as well. So after you run the program and you check for errors, you can look at your text file and you'll see that the file is in date value format and it has the regressor variables that we asked for. I asked for just 2 TCs in the program. You also can see the rate of decay in each variable. So you can see that the first TC had a decay rate of 0.9, Go down a little bit further, you see the second TC had a decay rate of 0.5. So if you haven't used imported variables into your spec before, I'm going to go over how to do that. Okay. So I'm just using a spec file that they're going to read in some published retail sales data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the regression spec. I'm going to add 4 arguments. 4 are going to be user, file, format, and user type. So the user argument is where you're going to name your variables. The file argument is where you're going to specify the name of the TC regressor text file so that you can read it into X13. The format will be date value. And the user type is going to be either AO or LS. It's going to depend on how you want to assign your regression effect. So you'll choose AO if you want the regression effect to be assigned to the irregular component, and you'll choose LS if you want the regression effect to be assigned to the trend component. I mean, typically TCs are assigned to the irregular component, but I believe that some were assigned it to the trend cycle for some of the pandemic effects. So next we'll just look at the results of running this spec file. And you'll see all the variables that are in the spec. So you see my trading day, you see some of the outliers that I specified, the automatic outliers as well, but you also see the user-defined TCs that I created as well. So you see my TC for August of 2017 that I specified would be the regression effects would go to the irregular. You can see that one's not significant. They also had a rate of 0.9. You also see my second TC for April of 2020, and that's being sent to the trend cycle component, the regression effects that is. And you can see that is significant with a critical value of negative 14.64. So those are the results. That's how it looks like. And that concludes my my demo.
Great, thank you, Eric.